I think there should be a good deal more scepticism about foreign aid, and a lot less open-mouthed belief that just because it's called aid, it actually helps anybody, because a lot of it helps the wrong people, and a lot of it helps nobody at all.
I'd just like to cite one of my own experiences volunteering in Nepal, but first I'd like to ask Peter Hitchens, have you ever been to an underdeveloped country before? Have you ever seen it firsthand?
This is some hideous symbol of Mother India, somewhere outside Bombay. The people behind me are bathing in the Ganges, guys in downtown Havana. If it weren't for the sunshine and the rum, I think they'd all go mad. Uzbekistan, one of the new dictatorships which has sprung up since the Soviet Union. This is the Islamic University of Deoband. This is Moscow. This is the new rebuilt Cathedral of Christ the Saviour. That's me in the Shwedagon Pagoda. There's some British troops just outside the Green Zone in Baghdad. A defaced Saddam Hussein. The Mandalay Rangoon Express pausing at a small town in the middle of Burma, and they make jokes about the regime. And I won't say they're the most terrific comedians I've ever heard, but they're some of the bravest people I've ever seen.
Lots of them, yes. How many would you like me to list?
Just one or two, but which?
Okay, Somalia.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to say that I have...
Famine.
Okay.
If 230 of our best young men and women, and probably 3 times as many others injured, 230 killed, perhaps 700 injured in the centre of London today, we'd all think, what is going on? What a terrible disaster. But because it happens over there, we pretend to ourselves that we're some ways protecting ourselves from terrorism by sending people out to act as targets for the Taliban.
All right,
I just don't see the logic of it. It doesn't make sense to me.
All right, Peter. Robert, where do you want to start with that then?
First of all, it was the 45 minutes before Saddam Hussein was going to rain missiles down on London. Now it's the bogeyman of terror. Look, I'm sorry about this, but it's much more likely that an eagle is going to drop a tortoise on my head while I'm walking down the street that I'm going to die in a terrorist outrage. And if I were worried about it, I would not rely on Mr. Miliband and his rabble to defend me from terrorism. They couldn't defend me. We, in many cases, there will be people in this room who supported, for instance, the bombing of Serbia during the Kosovo episode, and almost anybody in this room will believe that our conduct of the Second World War was correct. Now, in both cases, we pursued what we believed to be a good end. We can argue about that another time, and accepted that in the course of that, innocent people would inevitably die. And therefore, if you are going to say that you cannot accept even the faintest possibility of an innocent death as a reason for not having the death penalty, then you have to declare that you are a pacifist. You wouldn't have fought the Second World War, and there's a lot of other things you wouldn't have done. I think what people want to see is the police going back on preventive patrolling. And the crucial thing about a police officer is he's really not much use, not really much more use than you or I after a crime has taken place, unless he's good at first aid. The point of a police officer is to prevent crime from happening in the first place. And they don't do that if they're not there. And they're not there, and it's time they were put back. But thank heaven we're not a democracy in this country. I thank heaven there are restraints.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
I said thank heaven we're not a democracy in this country. The politicians in this country, they sit at the heads of parties which, if they tried to hold a flag day, no one would give a penny to. They rely entirely on dodgy billionaires and state support to keep themselves going. They represent almost nobody. They are themselves immensely incompetent and inexperienced. They've brought us nothing but disaster, mass immigration, uncontrolled crime, the worst education system.
Only the world was run by
Look, Ed, I could do a better job than
the world.
You any day of the week. I could carve a better Chancellor Exchequer, but no. Why should we be so glad to be run by these people who have no experience of anything and don't know anything and make a mess of everything they do? The crisis that we're in at the moment is caused by democratically elected politicians, allegedly. Why shouldn't you be glad that somewhere in our system there are restraints on them? I'm personally delighted. I think it should be more. Feminism is a wonderful project. The emancipation of women from stupid restrictions, preventing them from going to university, stopping them from voting, stopping them from holding property, all that. Who can disapprove? This is not about feminism. This is the mad project which says that women are the same as men. And everybody in this room knows perfectly well that that is not so. If you go to the Houses of Parliament and attend a debate in the House of Lords, where the people tend to be minimum age 60, 65, and compare it with one in the House of Commons, you'll find in the House of Lords people are educated, they speak informed sentences, they're aware of history, they can make literary references, people will understand, they've had experience, they've fought in wars. You go to the House of Commons, and the ignorance is obvious from the start in almost everything that's said. Hardly anybody is over 40. I mean, even the Prime Minister is a sort of teenager.
And there's well, I'm always suspicious when people start talking about children in these instances. It's usually a sign of propaganda.
That's from those figures from the Children's Society.
If people are running households, then it's up to them, provided there's enough money in the household to feed and clothe the children, to put the children first. And for propagandists to say, children will do this, children will do that, it's always child poverty. And also in the middle of this, there's discussions of poverty. There is no poverty in this country by comparison with what, as the Bishop particularly must well know, goes on in Africa or Asia. We do not have people who actually cannot afford to eat, have no shelter, freeze to death, have no access to medical benefit. Hang on a second. What puzzles me about the Bishop is that he and his colleagues on the bench seem to have mistaken the welfare state for the kingdom of heaven.
Given that my family that I was brought up in was fatherless, and I suppose the fact that my mother was on benefits and we lived in a council estate means that we were one of the problem families that you talk about, Peter. But actually, do you know what? We had a solid family life and we did well, and me and my brothers did well, and my mum struggled. And how dare you say that women, single parents on council estates living on benefits are therefore by definition problem families? How dare you?
Well,
how dare you?
Had I said any such thing, your phony outrage would be justified, but as I didn't, it isn't, and you really do need to do a bit better than
I made a note.
Yes.
I made a note. You talked about problem families being fatherless, and you talked about them being on benefits, and that describes the family life. That describes me as a child, and we were not a problem family.
It's a subject under discussion. I didn't say anything about your family or anything of the kind. You're just engaging in phony outrage.
I am not
for
engaging in
political
phony
propaganda
outrage.
purposes, which is what your party always does.
It strikes me that the human race would long ago have died out if we needed school teachers to tell us how to make babies. Will you come up with something which sounds conservative, because we're losing too many votes to UKIP? And so out comes Eric Pickles with his stuff about problem families, and out comes Theresa May with her guidelines about immigration. I promise you, none of these things will happen. There will be no difference. The mass immigration will continue at its unprecedented levels. The country will continue to be transformed. If you're in favour of that, then that's fine. What my problem is, nobody was ever asked about whether we wanted this. And by the time we discovered that it had happened, it was too late to do anything about it. And I really do think people should be a little bit more discontented about that than they are.
Okay.